GPU cycle itself becomes a commodity, right? And as we get more and more demand for GPU cycles, the central server model is going to be where every AI project who needs to grab in GPU cycles, they're going to be going there and purchasing as much GPU as they can from these central servers. It's optimized when it's in a central server. They can pool together, which means cloud gaming has to compete against AI projects to get GPU cycles out of those central servers. So right now it's already more expensive we're like 10 times cheaper than to go to an Amazon server. And again, we run faster.
More than that even. So if you look at services, so AWS, then you get raw hardware. You still have to build the entire solution on top of it. And then it's more expensive, right? But if you look at the actual competitors, the services like Arkware that have an even overhead on top, it's $6 an hour per user. $6 an hour per user. Insane. We do it for 7 cents. Now that's obvious.
The whole point was that the GPU cycles at central servers is just getting more and more expensive. It's going to be harder and harder for games to host on a central server. And again, it doesn't work just architecturally. Technology wise, it's just not the fastest solution. So we've got all kinds of advantages. I see your question, Bodwin. We'll get to it. Absolutely. But so again, what we're offering, and then there are other benefits too that kind of pop into our heads as we spoke about the central server and versus decentralized server. So why, hitting real quick, why the central server is so expensive? Obviously, you've got more competition. You've got a big building you've got to build. And Andy, what was the number? It was like 11. I heard 3, and then I heard 11 times more data centers that have to be built.
But that's specifically for AI. It was Michael Dell, I believe, said it was like 100 times the amount of data centers are going to be required over the next 15 years.
Right.
Now, if you imagine that, right? Even if you look at this from, I don't know what the costing. I think costings are, it obviously depends how big the data center is, because generally you can't use a building that's already been built. You've got to build it from scratch because of the air conditioning. Even down to the pollution. It's like the equivalent that we're building at the moment is the same pollution that comes out of Italy for the builds for GPUs that are going. And then if you imagine 100 times more, I mean the costing
100 Italies in terms of carbon.
100 Italies, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's madness. Yeah.
It's complete madness. And I would say, so why is going for a decentralized approach? Because it's still computers running, right? So the idea, in a massive data center, the heat is actually considered a waste product, right? But in your home, in the winter, it's not a waste product, right? So you save on electricity costs that would otherwise warm your house, right? Now, is one machine going to warm your entire house? Of course not, but it's going to reduce the cost.
Definitely. Do you remember that guy we met from? Yeah, there was T-Mobile. Basically, were running gaming rigs, weren't they, in the basement of? We met the T-Mobile guy, and they were running that, and they were running a whole office block on the rigs downstairs. Now, the interesting thing I was thinking about this is, as we now have got a wider kind of width for where we can actually deliver gaming to, as opposed to a smaller space, the way I see this is going to be hubs of buildings where companies, they might be gaming companies, they might be companies that, architects that use high-end gaming cards, they're going to put it in, they're going to have this running, and they're going to heat the and houses around them or whatever.
Developing countries, right? So we're targeting both the people who don't have a gaming machine, but also the hubs or the people that do, right? So in the developing countries, what you see everywhere, and it's basically one of the biggest opportunities right now is you have all of these internet cafes and gaming cafes that basically target their neighborhood. So during the day, what happens is a lot of people in the neighborhood, they mostly men, they come to the internet cafe, they play Web3 games, they earn a living out of the Web3 games on those gaming PCs, and they go home and then feed their family off the games that they're playing, right? But that's of course not a sustainable model again, because if you play games and then you get rewarded for effectively doing nothing, then there is no value being produced. So what we're saying, we're changing that model. So all of those internet cafes that have been set up for that Web3 craze and the gaming communities, we can basically transform them into hubs that mine, so to say, YOM tokens, and then they provide the entire ecosystem with gaming platforms on the mobile devices, right? So the people in the neighborhood who don't have the hardware, they can actually just connect automatically. They watch a few ads potentially, so that the nodes get paid, and that's it, right? So you have a thriving ecosystem.
YOM.